إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صفي من خلقه وحبيبه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد مصطفى وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Today we are going to talk about a hero who really has influenced the minds, the thoughts and the ideologies of the major mujahideen around the world. Okay? The major mujahideen and those people that are striving hard in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala against oppressive regimes. The hero that we are going to talk about today, if you ask them, they would say that they have been influenced directly as a result of this man and his writings. If you ask, for example, Shaykh Abdullah Azzam, he would say that the person he was most influenced by in his life was Sayyid Qutb rahmatullah alayh. And that's why it's very important that we understand his life and his works and what effect did he have on the society and how is it that his thoughts influenced and permeated society. We'll begin with his background and his family. He was born in a town in Egypt near Asyut called Musha. And it's a difference of opinion about his family, his great-grandfathers, whether he was of Indian origin or whether he was of Egyptian origin. But his family, his immediate family were well off, mainly because of the large inheritance that they had received from their grandparents. But that inheritance, of course, was gradually decreasing as Sayyid Qutb and his family were leading their life. His father was a man who was highly respected in the community and was seen as a central figure and also a political figure that they would go back to settle their disputes. And he was also a very practicing man. What we realize about Sayyid Qutb is that his family were a very practicing Islamic family from the very beginning. And Sayyid Qutb, his father, would take him every time to the masjid. He would pray 5 times salah in the masjid at that time. And his father at that time also managed to do hajj, which is quite an achievement at that time because it was very difficult for people to go to hajj and it was very expensive. Sayyid Qutb says about his father these very important words: he implanted in my senses while I was a small child true fear of the last day. True fear of the last day. This was implanted in the heart of Sayyid Qutb. And if anyone has read في ظلال القرآن, in the shade of the Quran of Sayyid Qutb, and they read the tafsir of the verses about the last day, they will realize what these words are and the effect that his father had on the life of Sayyid Qutb. Not only his father but his mother was also highly respected and also highly pious, and her 2 brothers, the uncles of Sayyid Qutb, they were Azhari scholars. And she was a woman who would generously give to the poor and the workers that would work in their field. She would always listen to the Quran, and the lasting impression of Sayyid Qutb of his mother is that she would listen to the Quran on the radio while looking at the workers on the field. And so his mother was very adamant that Sayyid Qutb, he doesn't grow up like an ordinary child, just plays around and gets involved with the amusement of life, but she wanted him to grow up like a man and therefore would shun him from many of the childlike activities. If we just have a look at the brothers and sisters of Sayyid Qutb to realize the greatness of this family that he came from. He had, excluding himself, 3 sisters and 1 brother. The oldest sister was called Nafisa. And let's just have a quick look at what happened to her. Along with Sayyid Qutb, she was tortured, and with her 2 sons as well. Her 2 sons, one was called Rifa'at and one was called Azma. Rifa'at, the nephew of Sayyid Qutb, was tortured and beaten and killed in front of him. While Azma, the other nephew of Sayyid Qutb, the other son of Nifasa, he was also tortured and beaten almost to the point of death. Amina, the next sister of Sayyid Qutb, she was engaged to one of the Ikhwanis while he was in prison. So she was engaged to one of the Ikhwani brothers while he was in prison. And she refused. He said, look, I will divorce you, or I will break this engagement because I'm going to be in prison a very long time. And she said no, and she persisted. And then eventually they got married, and she was 50 years old. She was 50 years old, they eventually got married. But this man, the husband of Amina, he was killed by Anwar Sadat, the tyrant. The third person in the line of Sayyid Qutb was his brother Muhammad. He was still alive today and is in Saudi Arabia. He was imprisoned along with Sayyid Qutb and was tortured almost also until he died. His fourth sister Hamida, her role was to look after the families and the women of the Ikhwan, while many of the Ikhwanis, they were put in prison by the Egyptian government. And she was the link between Sayyid Qutb and the rest of the Ikhwan while he was in prison. And in 1965, she was imprisoned with her brother and given 10 years of hard labor. So you can realize the family and the brothers and sisters that Sayyid Qutb he grew up with. And if any of this was to happen to our family, that all your brothers and all your sisters that are in prison, you have to ask yourself one question: how many of us would be able to take this? Okay, or how many of us would then, we would panic? But this happened to Sayyid Qutb, but did this deter this family in any way? We will see. If we look at the appearance of Sayyid Qutb, when you read the books of Sayyid Qutb, you expect to see a man who is very revolutionary, and he's a large man, and he's an aggressive man, because his works are quite aggressive. Okay? And they're very, very powerful, the writings of Sayyid Qutb. But many people, upon seeing Sayyid Qutb, and if you've seen his picture, you will be surprised. Okay, you will be surprised at his appearance. One man, when he visited Sayyid Qutb, he said to Sayyid Qutb himself, he said, I can imagine Sayyid Qutb to look like 1,000 other people except for you. Yeah? Anyone else I could think is Sayyid Qutb, but not you. Yeah? So the picture of Sayyid Qutb is very different. He had a brown complexion and was of medium height and of weak build due to the illness that overtook him in childhood and later in prison. He was a weak man, he was frail. If you look at his picture, you'll see a man who's gaunt, he's thin, right? He's not big and large. And upon meeting him, he was calm and collected and tranquil, not like the fiery revolutionary type of person that you would expect to see when you read his books. If we look at Sayyid Qutb as a child, this is very important because you realize the kind of tarbiyah that was given to him so that he became the man that he was. Sayyid Qutb as a child would enter the masjids and would read the 5 times prayer in the masjid. And not only this, he would attend the circles of the Azhari scholars. And he would always, as a child, help the poor and the oppressed, just like his father would help the workers in their field. Anyone he saw was poor or oppressed, he would help them and support them and aid them. There was an incident where Sayyid Qutb, he would go to school, and then one day his teacher, his Quran teacher, left the school for an argument. There was an argument between the school, and he went and set up his own madrasa to do hifz of Quran. And Sayyid Qutb's father promised this madrasa teacher that, I will send my son to you. And there was a competition between the school and the madrasa, the hifz madrasa. So Sayyid Qutb, he went to the madrasa to do hifz of Quran, and he found that the teacher wasn't teaching properly, and he found that the students were all messing around, and he was getting no benefit from this. And so he said to his mother that I want to go back to my old school. So he went back to his old school, and everyone from the hifz class and the teacher would jeer at those people in the school, because they said that these people, they are not memorizing Quran, they don't know anything about Quran, and we are memorizing our children Quran, and therefore we are better than them. And Sayyid Qutb, at a young age, he saw this as a challenge, and he said to himself that I will prove to these people in the hifz madrasa that I am able to memorize Quran. And therefore, at the age of 8 years old, he memorized every single year a third of the Quran. He stayed awake until 12 in the night memorizing the Quran, and by 3 years he had memorized the Quran by the age of 11. Sayyid Qutb, at a young age, would also like to be very brave and show to everybody that he's very brave. And one day his mother had taken him to his cousin's house, all to the other end of the village. And she forgot something, she needed something at the other side of the village. And he said, I need to get something. She was going to go. And Sayyid Qutb, it was in the middle of the night, at the age of 11, he said, I will go, our mother, don't fear. And it was known that that place was, supposed to be like infested with jinn and things on the way, and it was completely dark and there was no light anywhere. But Sayyid Qutb, he went. On the way, halfway through, suddenly fear overtook Sayyid Qutb, because he found himself in the middle of a dark place, and all the thoughts and ideas and the jinn ideas all came to him, and he stood still. And the man came to see him and rescued him from the situation. And then the man said, "What are you doing out here? Why are you out here in the night?" And he said, "Oh, I'm out here, I'm looking for the jinn. Yeah, I'm looking for them, I want to scare them away." He was a man, as a child, he was very intelligent. And, when he would sit with the scholars of Azhar in their circles, one scholar, it said, would be doing, tafsir of Surah Al-Kahf. This is just an example. And he reached the ayah, ذَلِكَ مَا كُنَّا نَبْغِ فَارْتَدَّ عَلَى آثَارِهِمْ. Okay? And this word, it should be ذَلِكَ مَا كُنَّا نَبْغِي with a ya at the end. And Sayyid Qutb, he said, why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said nabgh? Okay? Noon, ba and ghain without adding the ya. Why? Because there's no reason for the ya to disappear. There's no factor like lam or something, like lam, that would mean that the ya goes away. And at a young age he was asking this question. The Shaykh, he just answered him. They said that this is so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easier for the recitation, to make it easier for the recitation. And he didn't even realize that Sayyid Qutb was the one who asked the question. Sayyid Qutb, at a young age, he would gather his money, his pocket money, whatever he would have, and he would wait for a man called Am Saleh. Am Saleh would visit village to village, and he would have a bookstore with him, a large collection of books, and he would take it to the villages. When Sayyid Qutb would come, Am Saleh, he'd buy books from Am Saleh. Okay, and Am Saleh would have a set of books ready for Sayyid Qutb, okay, to purchase. And if he didn't have the money, Sayyid Qutb would say, "Let me borrow it." Okay, no, I'll have the money, I'll give it to you, the money next time you come. And like this, at a young age, not more than 12, he had his own personal copy collection of 25 books that he bought with his own money. And at that time, books were not like, cheap now like they are nowadays. Books were expensive. It was an expensive commodity. To have paper and to have books and to have people that were learning and read was an expensive commodity. Yeah? Not like nowadays, you buy a book in £5 or £8 and it's easy. But he had a collection. You can ask how many children today have a collection of books that they have bought with their own money. Okay, 25 books.